This program is made possible by the loyal financial support of the friends and partners of Family Policy Institute.
Good evening and welcome to Watchmen on the Wall. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, my guest in the studio is Cheryllyn Dudley, the Member of Parliament for the African Christian Democratic Party, or better known as the ACDP. Cheryllyn, welcome once again into the studio. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Errol. Great to be here.
And the last time we had Pastor Kenneth and Steve Swart here, you were off sick, so I'm glad you recovered. You're back with us, and we're recording this on the 15th of September, and tomorrow the 16th you've jet off to New York City to join the international panel of parliamentarians for freedom of religion and beliefs. Have I got that right?
You have got it right.
Okay, so tell us what this panel is about.
Well, we're actually meeting at the United Nations this time. We met last year in Oslo, and it was my first time last year. So this will be the second time. There'll be 100 members of parliament from across the world getting together, from in fact 50 different parliaments across the world.
And that's quite significant.
It is. It's a growing group who are committed to freedom of religion and belief. Very important. Globally, there is a greater and greater awareness of the clamping down and in fact the disregard of that particular human right. And this is a group of people who are backed at a pretty high level in terms of influence in different countries, and they are going to continue to try to spread. The idea would be that members of parliament are the representatives of the people. Yes. And if we ourselves in greater numbers are actually connecting on these issues, we can more quickly get those issues to actually be on the agenda in our parliament.
But it's quite significant that so many people from parliaments around the world will get together and form this panel, which tells us something, that religious freedom and beliefs, or the attacks against it, is becoming a major issue in the world.
No, absolutely. And there's also there's a need for more education in terms of what truly freedom of religion and belief means, because it's really it's not about clamping down on other people's freedom to express themselves as regard to your belief. It's not about stopping people even ridiculing your belief. What it's about is making sure that nobody can stop you holding your beliefs, acting on your beliefs, and expressing yourselves, yes, in terms of those
But here
beliefs.
we're talking more particularly about the biblical Christian worldview of life. It's because biblical Christians worldwide are being attacked for their beliefs and for expressing that. Like we saw with Kim Davis in the United States, the lady who refused to issue same-sex marriage licenses. I think it's in the state of Kentucky. And she's making a bold stand. And I think she's putting a message out there that, I don't believe in this. It's my religious conviction, and I refuse to get involved with this, regardless of what you say. That's my belief, and I stand on my belief, just like anybody else. If Muslims, for example, don't want pork in their shop to sell pork, then that's their right, that's their religious belief, and nobody can tell them they're hateful or they're bigots just because of their beliefs. And
I saw an interesting article the other day, I don't know if you saw it. It was actually Madonna's brother, who's a confessed homosexual, etc. And he wrote this scathing letter about the ridiculous attitude of the LGBT society in terms of what happened to Kim Davis. He was saying, surely she at least deserves the right to be able to hold to her convictions and her beliefs. He says, I see you bending over backwards in terms of other people and other religions, obviously referring to Islam. And he said, as a Christian, this woman surely at the very least deserves to be able to actually be true to herself.
Interestingly, on CNN, I was watching CNN the other day, and they They reported on the Kim Davis issue, but in a way that, you know, makes it look like she's a nut. And she has no right to do this because, you know, same-sex marriage has been legalized by the court. So this means that Christians have to abandon their beliefs and their convictions because the court has ruled in a certain way. How they get to that, I don't know. But then the very next segment was about a Muslim airline hostess on one of the US airlines that didn't want to serve alcohol because of her religious beliefs. But that report was more sympathetic to her beliefs. Now, I can't understand the hypocrisy between, you know, religious people have beliefs and convictions. And if it's not hateful or discriminatory against people, they have completely in their right to hold those beliefs and express those beliefs.
Sure, I think that's the thing. If people sort of stop for a moment from pushing their own agenda and think about something rationally, then you can come to a conclusion. You don't have to actually like someone else's beliefs. What we do have to do is live together peacefully.
That's right.
You have to find ways of living in a manner that we don't kill each other. And this is something that the whole world is experimenting with all the time. I mean, even at this point in where we are today. And a lot of the problem is that every one of us has some or many agendas. And that unfortunately disturbs that sort of practical side of our understanding, because there's that focus on actually making everything look like you want it to look or seem like you want it to seem. And that's dangerous. And we as Christians, I feel very strongly that we should not get trapped in that same kind of behavior.
Yes.
You know, so that we need a model what we speak about in terms of understanding what freedom of religion and belief truly means.
So, Cheryllyn, it appears that women in particular are making a stand. If you look at what's happening in America with Kim Davis making that bold stand, refusing to compromise on her beliefs. And then here in Cape Town, Zizifo Pai on the University of Cape Town campus that also refused to retract her statement on the ruling, same-sex ruling in the United States. So what's happening to the men?
Well, I think men are very willing to make a stand on these issues. I think perhaps they're just wising up a little in terms of this being the 21st century and men not really being the right people to speak out on these issues.
Not being in vogue.
Not being in vogue. And, you know, there's also this, particularly in South Africa, there's this understanding that what was previously disadvantaged now in terms of fairness and equality needs to be fairly advantaged. And so it just makes sense, rather than fighting against the flow, that we actually make our point within the boundaries that have been set by popular understanding at this point in time.
So, yeah. But there's a particular complexion of men that is completely out of fashion, not allowed to speak. Anything you say then is regarded as, well, you were previously advantaged and, you know, you come from that mindset. So do you think that is also causing people to just withdraw and not speak?
Well, there's two things there. And there are people with my complexion of the male variety who do still speak with an incredibly old mind frame and haven't learned to express themselves particularly well and perhaps have not caught up in terms of where life is at the moment. And then again, that doesn't speak for everybody, but it often speaks for the one or two who are the most vocal. So it does tend to give people that perception. As for the others, yeah, it's a little unfortunate at this point in life. If anybody's got my color complexion and they happen to be male, I'm at least a little advantaged. I have a female status, for which I am grateful. But it's a season, and there's a season for all things, and I'm sure that men are learning some incredible things through this time, particularly people who have my kind of colouring, and things that they would not have learned in any other kind of situation or scenario. So I believe that for all of us, what we go through, you know, obviously it will destroy some, but most it will actually strengthen, and people will come out better on the other side.
Yeah, I'm still, you know, amazed at the way our democracy turned out, because I lived through apartheid, and I know what that was like. And in 1994, with the new constitution and the new government, and we a new, open, transparent, honest, and democratic society, I believe okay, everybody can speak, so nobody is going to be condemned on the basis of the color of their skin, rather the content of their character, quoting a very great man. But that never happened. We still have a form of apartheid in South Africa where people...
Immediately the human tendencies come back into play. No, look, we have to be vigilant all the time because this seems to be the nature of man. I mean, we know what God says, that the heart of man is desperately wicked above all things. And if it wasn't for him and any commitment that we make to living according to how God wants us to live, I mean, we're all going to be naturally heading in that negative direction. And we see globally, I mean, the terrible violence, it's horrendous. So what we are capable of as human beings is beyond what we think where our imagination could take us. But truthfully, it's been so since the beginning of time.
Absolutely.
Just talking about that constitution, you know, this is what's so interesting about this time for someone like myself who's been in the ACDP for over 20 years. You know, the beginning of the ACDP, we had 2 people in Parliament, and what we were very focused on was in fact the drafting of the new constitution at the time. And we were bending over backwards to try to get the public in general and the church to actually see that certain clauses were like a minefield.
Yes.
And that once these things were triggered, this is what was going to happen. So we're sitting in a world today where we're actually seeing everything that we warned people of at the time is happening to the church and happening to Christians generally.
And people couldn't foresee that at the time.
It was very difficult because people wanted to feel like, okay, we were over dramatizing, and really it was just handfuls of people who were able to see it that little bit more clearly. Of course, there's a lot that they've learned along the way as well, because sometimes in the way you express what you saw clearly, maybe we had to learn a lot in that situation. But I'm particularly grateful now, of course, because a lot of what's happening is our legal Christian fraternity are now able to get in. And that's because one of the things we had success with at that time was that we managed to get people concerned enough to actually march on Parliament in terms of the clause that would have made South Africa a secular state in writing.
I remember that.
And that was dropped. And so with the ACDP's arguments in Parliament and the proposals to drop it, plus the rallying people to march, that got dropped now. Obviously, to be a secular state is not a bad thing in itself, because when that first came in, the idea of that was to keep the state out of the affairs of the church, which would have been a good thing, except we know how it's been distorted over the years, and we know that it doesn't mean that anymore. And we've seen, for example, in the USA, how it means that anything Christian is actually cannot be in the public square. And there's a tax on everything and everyone. So with that little bit of understanding, getting that clause to be dropped, it has given over the years the courts the ability to balance freedom of religion with the other rights, which it wouldn't have done if that clause was in there.
Correct. Cheryllyn, we want to talk about homo naledi, and then also the abortion issue that, I don't think it's getting enough airtime, enough opposition, but there's a major event happening in Durban, Umhlanga. The National Alliance for Life is holding a conference on this issue, getting all the pro-life ministries together, and then also the march. We're going to be there, so we want to talk a little bit more after the break. So don't go away. More with Cheryllyn Dudley after the break. Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Cheryllyn Dudley, the ACDP member for Parliament. Now, Cheryllyn, welcome back. You served, or are still serving, on the Health Portfolio Committee in Parliament.
I'm not on the Health Portfolio Committee at the moment. We choose and we do it strategically. We were expecting certain legislation to come up in social development and in women in the presidency, and of course some on international relations. So I'm not technically on the Health Committee, but as a Member of Parliament, wherever an issue is that we are particularly concerned about, we can be in that committee, and our input is always there. Obviously we don't vote if you're not a member, but then with the kind of majority that we have with our ruling party, voting has never been an issue. It's really more the input that you make.
But you've got a lot of experience on the Health Portfolio Committee anyway. So before we talk about the abortion issue in South Africa, we're going to talk about homo naledi. this skull they found somewhere, and as now that proves, evolution is a fact. Of course, I don't think there's a biblical Christian in this country that believes that for 1 second. Should we be concerned?
I'm really surprised that people are quite as anxious as they are. For me, it's a great find. I think it's wonderful that those scientists who've obviously given their life to that work have had this exciting little find. And I'm sure it's great for that community because it should, feed visitors. It hopefully will stimulate their economy a little bit there. So we need to be happy for them. On the other hand, when people come up with concerns that it's not going to affect Christianity and creation, and as I said to somebody, from the beginning of time, those who have rebelled against God have been trying to disprove God and disprove creation, and it really has had little to no impact in terms of the growth of Christianity.
Absolutely.
Or on the passion of people who, globally, the significant numbers of people who absolutely understand God to be the creator of all of the universe, the entire universe, and everything in it. So finds like that are exciting. God has hidden lots of things. We're going to find all kinds of things. But does it disprove creation? No, it actually proves that there's this most amazing creator God. Because and just to look around, and people are also going on about the bone structure of this particular find. And I'm thinking, how strange in Africa, because bone structure, we see similarities in that bone structure. We have incredible diversity, and it's amazing. And I can't understand why people want to somehow make that bone structure something less than what it actually is. It's just a variety.
I think you're right. There are people that are desperate to disprove God.
Sure.
They've been doing that from the dawn of time and will continue to do so.
Yeah.
But I think you need more faith to believe in evolution than you do to believe in God.
Absolutely.
So I'm quite comfortable. I don't need any evidence for God. I don't need every find, every claim they make just proves that we have an amazing God that is created, and we are accountable to Him. And I think that's their main fear, being accountable to this God. So let's get Him out of the way.
Absolutely. And people who don't know God, of course, will want to come up with all kinds of theories and maybes and ifs and whatever, and that's great. Let them wonder. And one day, hopefully, they'll meet that God who's the creator of the universe.
The more likely they are to find. So the next issue is abortion. Obviously, abortion in South Africa is now, most people are concerned, at abortion, not only legal abortion, but illegal abortions. If you see the stickers and the advertisements on our lampposts, they're all over the city, at university campuses, and even at schools. So illegal abortion is still a thriving business. But abortions in South Africa, the legal ones, is well over 1 million, and there's no sign that it's declining. We get reports from the Eastern Cape that a teenage girl has an abortion every 10 minutes. Abortion has become a form of contraceptive in South Africa because it's so easy. Girls as young as 12 years old do not have to consult their parents. They can walk into a clinic and have the abortion, and the taxpayer has to pay for it. So, Cheryllyn, do you have any hope there's going to be any kind of change with the abortion issue in South Africa?
Well, it's shocking and it's sad, but what I have noticed, obviously, in my first 10 years in Parliament, this was fiercely defended, and there was no one was going to budge. No one was even going to allow the topic to come up, which, of course, I was in the habit of doing constantly, which made the life a little bit exciting in Parliament itself. However, in this last 6 years under the Zuma administration, things have changed quite a bit. And I have noticed ministers, and like the health minister, who are not particularly pro-abortion in any way. And they are far less defensive in terms of the positioning on that. In fact, I heard the Deputy Minister of Health the other day, he was trying to describe, and now I must actually get it on Hansard, but he was trying to describe how shocking the behavior of the DA was, because they were shooting down some new program they were putting in place before the thing had even actually been birthed. And he described it as how shocking and terrible it is. It's like aborting a baby, he said. Before it's even born, he went into this whole description of the horrors of abortion. And I thought, I wonder if he can really hear himself speaking. So one day I will like to show him what he actually said. Look, because the fact is that's truthfully how the majority of people in South Africa feel.
About abortion.
About abortion. But there had been sold the line that women were previously disadvantaged, and a part of the plan, this abortion thing was part of that, to keep you tied down and not free, as other people of other skin colors were free. Somehow we apparently were able to have abortions without any problem in the thinking of people. And this was another way of keeping women down. So so people were able to sort of disassociate from what really we were talking about, and that's killing your own child.
So you make it a human rights issue, a discrimination, equality issue.
They did it well.
All of these things.
They did it well.
But the other thing is, one of the main reasons for legalizing abortion on demand in South Africa was because there were many women having backstreet abortions. But that has not declined. That is still thriving in South Africa. Sure. So how do they explain that?
Well, you see, they don't try and explain it, they just blame. And they'll blame the one or two Christians who have made a stand within the health sector in terms of wanting to have the courage of their convictions and not be involved in abortion. So it's very easy to take the focus off of that and just to start blaming somewhere else. So we know those kind of games.
Now, I remember a couple of years ago, you introduced a private member's bill on the whole Termination of Pregnancy Act, in that people had to go for counseling and all kinds of other things. Common sense, things that a young woman could go through before actually making the decision to have an abortion, and that was shot down. Are you considering reintroducing that?
Well, we've learned a lot, because the first private member's bill that I brought was actually a constitutional amendment to protect the right to life of the unborn child. And I felt that was a good place to start, because even if it didn't go very far, it was a statement, it was a starting point. Now, it was actually, I do absolutely believe with all of my heart that is vitally important, because what we don't want is to take away choice. Because God doesn't take away choice. You can choose hell if you want to choose hell. He just wants you to understand the consequences of that choice, and that you don't have to make that choice. That's the important thing. So, but protecting the right to life of the unborn child is critically important, because if you don't do that, the courts can't balance the right of the child against the mother or anything else. And that is important in this democratic age, is that we do actually have these rights being able to be balanced. At the moment, there is no right for the unborn child, so that is not even vaguely considered. And so it is treated as if it's a piece of rubbish.
Yeah, and you look at what's happening in the United States of America with Planned Parenthood and all of those grisly and gruesome videos that have emerged of Planned Parenthood actually harvesting baby parts for sale. And people, they caught people on camera, officials of Planned Parenthood, discussing nonchalantly about, the body and how they harvest and make sure they don't damage certain organs so they can get a higher price for it. Now, this is the full horror of abortion, what this industry actually is. But yet, people are still medley going along. In America, there's a big move now to defund Planned Parenthood, because they get about $500 million in taxpayers' money to perform their gruesome deeds. And it doesn't appear to have an impact on governments, on legislatures, on people, in the abortion business. Is there anything in South Africa you think there's discussion, a debate that has started around what is happening in America?
Well, at the time that when I was in the health committee and we were working on the actual health bill at the time, that was one of the things that I was fighting very hard for, because what they called a zygote, which was the fetus, up to I think it's 3 weeks, is legally allowed to be experimented on. It's not called a baby. And I had constantly had to bring the argument of, or at least ask the health department, can you show us exactly what changes in this 1 week, 2 week, 3 week old fetus at 4 weeks? What exactly changes to make it nothing then and then something you can't experiment on at 4 weeks, because there is no logic in that. But of course, that was in the days of there being huge defences and fences around the whole, anything to do with abortion. And so it was very difficult. It was a hard fight. And it was also very difficult to get South African public or the churches to get the fact that we were really needing some assistance at that particular point in time, because this was really a matter of life and death. And where we fought a hard fight, it went through. So in South Africa today, there is in fact a clause that allows for babies up to a certain age after conception to be experimented on. And that, of course, I don't believe at this point in time, with the regulations that are in place, I don't believe that's being abused at this point in time in terms of the sales that we've seen. But it's always the thin edge of the wedge. It's there, it's possible, and wherever human beings are involved, that people feel they can make something out of it, there's always that chance that somebody is going to push to do that. And it's good that we are taking note of what's happening in the USA, and it's good that we stay alert here and that we continue to ask the questions that need to be asked, and we continue to let people see that eyes are on these issues and it can't just slip through.
But the thing I noticed, again, comparing the United States with South Africa and the pro-life movement, which is very powerful and very vocal in the United States. In October, the team and I are traveling to the US to attend the World Congress of Families. And some of the biggest names in the pro-life movement is going to be there. Lila Rose, the young lady that exposes Planned Parenthood and all their grisly deeds, and a number of others. I think it's the niece of Martin Luther King, Alvida King. She's going to be speaking over there. But they've got all these incredible organizations and people, and I read somewhere that in the United States now more than 52% of Americans disagree completely with abortion on demand, and so there's a groundswell of opinion changing in the United States because of the great work that these pro-life organizations are doing. But we lack this in South Africa. The pro-life movement is very weak. There's not much happening aside from Doctors for Life and Africa Christian Action, when they have the vigil outside Parliament, the march in Durban every year in October, first week of October, the conference, the march. That's all really. And the church appears to have sort of accepted the fact that abortion is here to stay, and there's not much opposition to it. And I think it's sending out altogether the wrong message. What do you think
Well, we have a completely different political system, of course. So what they do in the United States doesn't necessarily work here. So there's that to keep in mind, and there is a way to do it here. And the way to do it here is that if the majority of people understand that they would like to see the rights to life of the unborn child protected, not superseding the rights of the mother or any other kind of bullying situation, simply protected in a manner that we can actually logically weigh these contentious issues. With the majority wanting that, they can actually make sure that their vote counts and that they put their vote behind a political party that would systematically see that we move in that direction of protecting the right to life of the unborn child.
And the ACDP is the only party that stands for life.
At this point in time, yes, it is. And it would make a huge, look, it's got a 20-year track record. It's also had 20 plus years of learning in terms of understanding. Also, it's one thing just to have rosy sunglasses on. It's also another thing to actually try and implement these perfect laws that we're thinking about. And so it is good also to put your vote where people have actually come to understand some of the realities legalities and practicalities around that, because also we don't want absurd situations. For example, you can't have a situation where every woman people have miscarriages in their early, most women have had a couple of miscarriages in the early months. Some don't even know they've had it. So you can't have people invading people's homes and checking it. We don't want absurd results. But what we do want is the protection of that right to life, so that it can be balanced along with all the other rights that people have.
And Cheryllyn, you and the ACDP have been doing great work on the health issues, building awareness as well. We thank God for the ministries that are out there, reminding people that abortion is a sin. It's murder of the unborn. It's a life given by God, and that we should not become comfortable with it. Never, ever. And that our voice should be louder and more strident. We should be speaking out and reminding government.
But our point there is we can speak out and become loud, we can become strident, and we can speak to government till we're blue in the face. But we actually have something in place where we can do something about it. We can stand on street corners until we drop. Or we could simply organize ourselves in a manner that we can actually have a majority of people sitting in those seats of parliament, so that the laws can be brought into line with what's going to be good for the majority of people in South Africa. In fact, for all of the people in South Africa.
Yeah. On a number of issues, on a number of rights. And, people find it remarkable when I travel overseas that 79.8% of South Africans call themselves Christians, but they vote for people who don't believe the way they do. They work against themselves.
I think also there was some sort of, you see why that's happened in the beginning, because there were sort of issues that were so skewed that needed to be put right, and so people's focus was on that. So once you start talking about other things like abortion, that was all. Plus, for example, people who had lived through the struggle era, those women, a lot of those women were not able to do what they did in terms of that struggle if they hadn't had abortions. So we must understand that it's a hugely sensitive issue, because a lot of people on this side of the whole apartheid issue actually have done some huge damage and have had to work through and would need healing in that area. So to start just beating them with this idea of abortion being murder, it actually, sometimes it makes a lot more sense to come from a different point of view and actually talk about healing, and actually, because people become defensive rather than if you come in a different sort of manner. People's defenses are put down and people can start to understand it's not about blaming people for what they've done. It's about let's do it better. Let's move forward together and do it better.
And I think there's talented Christians out there that need to get more involved in this, in engaging government and society on the issue of abortion, because as you say, the more we speak about it, the better we can get results out of this. But Cheryllyn, we have run out of time. It's great coming into the studio again and speaking to you. We wish you well on your trip to New York, on the panel, the parliamentarians and the religious freedom issues. We thank you for always standing strong and fighting the big issues for us in Parliament. We thank God for you, for Steve, Pastor Kenneth, and we bless you in your work.
Thank you very much.
I'm talking to Dr. Albu van Eden, the CEO of Doctors for Life, and also the national chairman of the National Alliance for Life. We are at a workshop here in Durban talking about these issues. And Dr. Albu, thank you for talking to us. In the workshop earlier, you said that you have a desire to get more Christians in this country involved in the pro-life movement, more people talking out about abortion and the evils of abortion. But the reality is that the church has kind of gone silent on the issue of abortion. Why do you think that is, and how do we encourage Christians out there who obviously know that abortion is wrong, but don't know or may have reservations about speaking out against it?
Well, I think the Christians, it has reached the point where it's so bad because Christians didn't do their part. We've got figures about the national attitudes towards abortion. Earlier figures had showed that amongst the white population in the region of 70% are pro-life. and approximately 85% plus of the black population was pro-life. Amongst Christians, it's much more higher, because Christianity is in essence pro-life. It is a pro-life message that calls people to responsibility and calls them to live out the principles of their faith, not just in church on Sunday, but on everyday issues like, for instance, the abortion issue. And so we've been having this National March for Life for the last few years. I've been very encouraged by it because it has grown approximately 100% each year, and we would like to keep this momentum. So we would like to appeal to the church and Christians across the nation to get involved in this. This is the only national March for Life, or the National Pro-Life Occasion. This is actually a platform where all pro-lifers can stand together, irrespective of your religious background, but even more so, all Christians should stand together. And we are really hoping that by keeping these conferences, arranging these marches, Christians should realize that the baby is about to die in their arms. Children are going to die. Children are going to be aborted. Women are going to be marred and mutilated psychologically, as long as we keep quiet about it. And the reason why it's come to where it's come is because we kept quiet.
Now, Dr. Albo, as a medical doctor, I've heard a doctor earlier in this week say that, you know there is no doctor that believes that abortion is okay. They all know it's murder. They all know it's wrong. But some have just numbed their conscience. As a doctor, do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I think especially if he knows what his job is all about. You know, if you look at the embryological textbooks, the 5 so-called Bibles of embryology, all of them say that the life of a human being starts at conception. So as far as that's concerned, and textbooks do not incorporate principles that are still being debated in general. Once you've got a final decision on a topic, it starts being incorporated into textbooks. And this is the 5 main textbooks in embryology that says it just unequivocally.
So life starting at conception is a settled scientific medical fact.
It's a fact. It's a settled fact. There's no debate about it.
So what we're seeing as doctors perform abortions is it's because political pressure and because of the pro-choice movement, that it's become a human right. And so it's human right and choice over medical and scientific fact.
That's right. But, you know, there are other factors, like there's finances. There are people that will kill for money. So finances play a role. There can be a case that the doctor has become so distanced from his subject that he doesn't really realize what he's busy doing, because, I mean, we are being taught at medical school, when you treat a pregnant patient, that you've got actually 2 patients which you're treating. And as medical science improves, it gets better and better. They're doing intrauterine operations, and they go further and further with these operations. And children that are in the womb with an inherited deficit are being operated upon and are born normal and healthy. So everything points in favor of that principle, really.
Welcome back to the program. My guest in the studio is Clive Human of Standing Together to Oppose Pornography, or better known as STOP. Clive, welcome to the program. Always good to see you.
Thanks very much, Errol. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Now, Clive, we're talking about pornography and children. The South African Law Reform Commission has recently released their issue paper on children and pornography, and you've been doing a lot of work on this issue. On children being increasingly younger children being exposed to pornography online. It's becoming a huge problem in South Africa.
It's an epidemic. It's an epidemic proportions in our country, in the world, in fact. And Errol, you know, many years ago, the average age of first internet exposure was deemed to be 11 years of age. That was the average age that kids were first exposed to hardcore pornography on the internet. Today, in the more recent research, they say it's now 8 years old.
Gone down to 8 years old. And that's in South Africa as well?
In South Africa as well. We're not far behind the rest of the world. You know, technology is technology, and our kids have access to every single angle of that.
That is horrendous. I mean, it's frightening to think. And if you look at the reports coming out from Childline and the Department of Social Development, they're saying that the child-on-child sexual abuse is increasing in South Africa. That's children raping other children as a result of being exposed to hardcore pornography. And I think most people, Clive, that hear this, when we talk about hardcore pornography, have no idea what we're talking about.
Pornography today has got so much more violent, cruel, and degrading towards women and children. It's unbelievable, you know, that's not deemed hate speech in this country. The way the terminology that's used to address women, the way that it's almost like torture, what women are put through in pornography today. You know, people may be sitting out there thinking pornography is still the old-fashioned, like Scope magazine, those many years ago. It is so much more violent and torturous towards women today. And that is what our children are being brought up on. That is where they are getting, a lot of them are getting their basic sexual knowledge from pornography. And I mean, that is frightening.
I think we're beginning to see that in our society. If you just read the newspapers, watch the television news, the amount of children involved in sexual abuse, the amount of children involved in, producing their own child pornography. Children are producing child pornography on their devices and sharing that with their friends. And now government doesn't know what to do about it because, you know, these are children producing child pornography and distributing it to their peers. And if an adult did that, they would go to jail for 25 years or something. So, but what do you do with a child?
Yeah, you know which parents must understand. They are giving devices to their children. Under 18, you're a child. So they can't sign cell phone contracts and things like that. Now, if that child is found with pornography on his cell phone, let alone child pornography, but just normal pornography, if there is such a thing as normal pornography, but they are found with pornography on their phone, that parent could be charged with willful neglect or abuse of that child. You know, they should be finding out how to check their kids' cell phones. They should put in rules in their homes. You know, the kids are in their homes under their roof, that at a certain time the cell phones get handed in at night. Why do they need to have their cell phones when they go to bed at night? They should have, with the younger children, maybe set up a set of rules. Internet, that if I won't give my details over the internet to anyone. You know, some integrity rules that they should put up where the kid is happy with and the parents are happy with. These are the type of things, kids need boundaries and we have to give them these boundaries.
But now, Clive, we have the problem of irresponsible parenting in South Africa. I think that the majority of children in South Africa are not under responsible supervision. Then we got the problem of only 35% of children live with both biological parents in South Africa. That means 65% of children is a single parent. A lot of them don't have any parents at all. So who supervises them? Of course, single parents are doing a great job, but sometimes they can't be with their kids all the time, leaving them unsupervised. And so the internet then becomes a major threat against children because the exposure to hardcore terrible things like you mentioned, it's so easy now for children to get that, and we're seeing the consequences in society of that, where more and more children are involved in early sexual activity and it's having devastating consequences on their lives. So we need to stop this. And at STOP, you've done such great work. I mean, you're counseling children now, you tell me.
Yeah, Errol, it's frightening to feel that younger and younger children are being exposed to this, which we've discussed. But it's now the effects I'm seeing where children were exposed to it 10, 12, 15 years ago to pornography. And today, in their late 20s, even their early 30s, they are suffering from sexual dysfunction because they've been brought up on a diet of hardcore, high-definition pornography. So that when they, with a girlfriend or whatever, they just can't relate. They can't relate in a physical way with those people. I've had people who are newly married, and the wife is devastated because she feels she's just not attractive to her husband.
And what about, pedophiles? Grooming children using pornography, that's another big threat. And there's no regulation to control this, regulate this thing. It's happening all over the country.
Pedophiles use pornography, they take it and they show it to these vulnerable children. And they see adults doing what they're doing, or they show child pornography, and they feel, well, it must be all right because adults are doing it, he's showing it, it can't be too bad. And they groom them in that way. And then they also use that as a form of currency to swap with other people, in this underworld of child pornography, which is a growing, they say it's over a $5 billion industry a year, child pornography, which is illegal in most of the countries in the world today. Only in the countries where they don't have the resources and that, to fight for child rights and to police this type of thing, this is where, it is blossoming, should I say. But it's something that has to be from every person every person's responsibility to protect our children, because that's our future. And if we're bringing up a nation of children who are, sexually
perverted, their minds are perverted.
Yeah, it's frightening for what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. This is exploitation. It's exploitation of men, of women, of children. It is evil, it's depraved, and it must be stopped. It must be eradicated in our country, because pornography demeans and degrades women. It misrepresents them as sex objects. People usually argue, the libertarians amongst us argue that it's freedom of expression. It helps, for enjoyment, and it helps us in our marriage. Nothing can be further than from the truth, because all the research coming out all over the world now is showing that pornography is destroying. Men become addicted, young boys become addicted. They cannot have proper relationships. Their view of women are distorted. And so women become sex objects that can be used, misused. It's fueling prostitution and trafficking.
Big time. They say that 75% of all women and children trafficked today, it's into the sex industry. So by clicking on a site, by looking at it, by using it, you are actually fueling trafficking
and trafficking. And trafficking is a big problem in our society in South Africa, because we're the wealthiest nation in Africa, and so they're trafficking poor women into this country and out of this country into other nations, and it's a issue that we're busy fighting at the moment. Then there's the issue with the Film and Publication Board that has now just introduced online regulation, and they've done that to protect children from being exposed to pornography. And there's been this whole cry out against the Film and Publication Board because they've done this. But again, the liberals shouting hysterically, censorship, government want to control what you access on the internet. But when you speak to the people at the Film and Publication Board, it's they grappling with this thing of so many children being exposed to pornography, children becoming sexual abusers of other children, and they don't know how to deal with this. Yet we have people pushing against it.
But if I can just say, a lot of children, people out there must realize, a lot of children don't go and look for it, for sexually explicit material on the internet. They come across it when they're doing projects for school, etc., and it's a shock to them. It can traumatize them. And research has shown that children that are exposed to hardcore pornography will have the same feelings and emotions that a person that is actually being sexually abused, a child that is being sexually abused. The physical symptoms can be exactly the same just by coming across pornography on the net.
So it's true. Children are being targeted by the marketers of smut. They've been targeted because they want to grow them, raise them as consumers of pornography, because that's where they make their money. And that's why this issue paper recently released by the South African Law Reform Commission is so important. And we're calling on Christians all over this country to please respond to that. They've made it quite easy. The Law Reform Commission wants to know from the South African public, and they put it in about 40 or so questions, do we need better and stricter regulation to regulate the internet, to regulate these places where children can easily be exposed to pornography? And the short answer, of course, is yes. But because they have to balance, freedom of expression and freedom of this and freedom of that, they're trying to make sense of all of this, and they also want to get an understanding of where the South African public are at. So they put this 40 questions. You can answer, you don't have to answer all 40 of it. You can answer what you can answer. But my appeal, and yours is too, Clive, I imagine, to people out there, to go and get onto that issue paper from the South African Law Reform Commission. It's called Children and Pornography, and to answer those questions and submit it to them, because they want to know, I think most people in South Africa are horrified at the amount of children involved in early sexuality and being exposed to pornography. They want to know that people care, and what are people saying? What should we do as government?
And Errol, if you look at it, a lot of people sitting out there say, yes, I agree with you, what you guys are saying, but how do we, I don't know, I haven't got children, I'm too old, whatever. They can just take 20 minutes, 15 minutes and do this law reform issue paper, go through it, and that would be a huge step in the right direction, because then we as Christians standing together, anyone out there can stand together and just tell government exactly what we need and what we want.
We must make our voices heard on this issue, because Christians are always complaining government doesn't listen to us. Here, the Law Reform Commission that is working on this issue paper is asking the public, please tell us your views on the issue of pornography and children. We want to hear what you have to say. Then they're going to put all of those submissions, they would collate that, and they will make a recommendation to the Department of Justice, which means that everybody that speaks into this paper, their voice is going to be heard when that draft legislation is formed in Parliament. So what I want, and I know what you want, Clive, is a complete ban on pornography on the internet, to be blocked at tier 1 level, and for the internet service providers to be made responsible to make sure that that thing doesn't come into this country. Then, because adults have rights, the Constitution gives them certain rights. We can't limit that, but at least those who want to access pornography have to register. In other words, they have to opt in. Now, they're doing this in the UK, they're doing this in Iceland, and it's working. And the reason they're doing it in this country is to protect children. And I think if we need to limit our rights to protect children, I think every adult should be okay with that. But we needed, so adults would opt in, and when somebody opts in to download pornography, at least they can be monitored. Yeah. So if they're downloading child pornography, then the authorities will know about it. And if they expose children to pornography, which is a criminal offense already in this country, they can be held criminally liable for that. And that's how we need to tighten this up.
Yeah, and there are ways and means. I mean, VirtueNet in Durban, they have the ways and means to block at tier 1, level, to block pornography coming into the country. And it won't slow the internet down, it won't, we won't even miss it, but then we at least, if we have this choice, no, we don't want it, it's not available, that's great. If you want it, you can make as you say, the application, I want to get it. And it'll just protect so many millions of our children.
Absolutely, and especially that thing you were talking about where children are doing a project for school and they're looking for something and they type in misspell a word and they get onto a pornographic site, a hardcore pornographic. We have to stop that. And I'm glad you mentioned VirtueNet, because VirtueNet it's a great tool. You can download, it's virtuenet.com. You can download and you can protect the internet in your home. You can protect your children, getting access by accident, pornography. So virtuenet.com, you put all the details on the screen. You can go onto their site, download filters and protections, download and protect your family and your children.
Even for bullying and things like that, it's really, the tools are there, but the government just have to say, right guys, this is the way we're going to go, let's do it.
Yes, so we as the Christian church, we need to do a lot more on the issue of pornography, because firstly, the way it treats women, demeans and degrades women, it fuels rape. We know that because just the way women are portrayed in pornography as subservient, as sex objects, nothing more than that. And in South Africa, Our annual rate of rapes and sexual abuse against women is 65,000 women are raped in South Africa every year. And those stats are not going down. 25,000 children are raped and abused in South Africa every year because there's no fight against it. There's no resistance. There's no regulation. And here we have this wonderful opportunity with the South African Law Reform Commission now saying we've got an issue paper. We recognize there's a problem and we're asking the public, please speak to us. So if you go to our website, www.familypolicyinstitute.com, and you click on Take Action, the little icon on the top, Take Action, the issue paper from the Law Reform Commission, Children and Pornography, you'll find it there, click on it, download it, and answer those questions. You don't have to do it all at once because the cutoff date is 30th November 2015, this year. So you can take time, answer thoughtfully, answer every question or the questions that you can, take your time, work through it, and then submit it before the close of date, the 30th November. If you need help, you can contact us at info@familypolicyinstitute.com or Clive Human, and what would be the contact email address?
stop@stop.org.za.
stop@stop.org.za. You can, Clive is an expert on pornography. He's studied on it. He's counseled people. He understands all the ins and outs, and he's doing great work combating this terrible threat against our women and our children and our men. So many men and young boys getting addicted to pornography, and we've got to stop this. We need to protect marriage. We need to protect the institution of the family. We need to protect children, women, men from this insidious threat against decency in South Africa. So again, I appeal to you to go to our website or the South African Law Reform Commission's website. Get the issue paper called Children and Pornography. Answer those questions and be part of the solution. So Clive, I want to thank you once again for coming in, for the great work you do. It's always a privilege working with you, and God bless you in the work you do.
Thank you, Errol.
That's our show for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. We value your comments and suggestions for the show. So please write to us at info@familypolicyinstitute.com. Please visit our website at familypolicyinstitute.com and subscribe to my weekly newsletter. This is my primary method of sharing critical information concerning faith, family, and religious freedoms in South Africa. You can also join our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Remember, the latest edition of Joy and Jeug magazines are available at retail stores across the country. Make sure you get your copy. Thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you, and remember, keep standing.